The year 2387 was supposed to be a celebration. 50 years since humanity joined the Galactic Confederation. 50 years of being part of something bigger than Earth, but as commander, Jiwoo Park sat in the cold metal chair of conference room 7. He felt nothing like celebrating. The room stretched out like a football field, all white walls and floating screens showing star maps. At the center sat the three species that really ran everything. The Veltar looked like living glass sculptures, their bodies catching light and throwing it back in rainbow colors. They never stood up, always floating in their special chairs, like they were too good to touch the ground. The Chronothi were different. Big as bears, but walking on two legs, covered in dark scales with old battle scars cut deep into their skin. They loved to show off those scars. Each one was a story about how tough they were, how many fights they had won. Then there were the Zep. They looked like giant squids, but smarter than any computer. Their tentacles moved fast over glowing screens, always counting money, always making deals. They owned most of the trade routes between the stars. Jiwoo was the only human in the room. Again, the human colonies will give us 40% of their food this year, said High Counselor Villain. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Pretty but cold. This is final. Jiwoo's hands went tight under the table. Last year, it was 30%. The year before, 25%. Every year, they wanted more. Honored Counselor, our people are already hungry. The outer colonies barely have enough food for their own families. War Chief Grektho made a sound like a dog growling, his yellow eyes fixed on Jiwoo like he was looking at a bug. Your people exist because we let them. The baby species should say thank you for our protection. Protection from what? Gigu asked before he could stop himself. The room went quiet. Even the Zephyrians stopped their tentacle dancing on their money computers. High Counselor Velenith's glass body got brighter, which meant he was angry. Protection from us, he said very slowly. Back in the Sol system, far from the Confederation's watching eyes, Admiral Minho Kim stood in a room that did not officially exist. The sign on the door said Agricultural Research Station 7. Inside, it looked like the bridge of a starship from the future. Screens covered every wall, showing star maps and ship designs and weapon tests. Engineers in white coats worked at stations that hummed with power. This was where humanity's real work happened. This was where they built the things that would change everything. How did the meeting go? Asked Captain Soyoung Lee. She was young for a captain, only 32, but she had the kind of smart eyes that missed nothing. Minho watched the live feed from the Confederation meeting room. He could see Jiwoo trying to be polite while the aliens treated him like dirt. About as well as we expected. They want more food, more money, more of everything. The colonies can't give much more, Soyoung said. People are already eating one meal a day on some worlds. I know. Minho turned to a screen showing Earth's moon. From the outside, it looked normal. Inside, it was full of factories and weapons, and ships that the aliens had never seen. How are the new fighters coming along? First Squadron is ready for testing. The stealth systems work better than we hoped. Their sensors can't see us at all. In the Cyber Warfare Division, they cracked the Chronothi defense grid last week. Turns out they're impossible to break. Security has 17 different backdoors. Minho almost smiled. For 50 years, the aliens had shared their technology with humanity. They thought they were being generous, giving the primitive humans their old, outdated equipment. They had no idea that humans were really good at taking things apart and putting them back together better than before. Every alien computer humanity had ever seen was now an open book. Every weapon design had been improved. Every ship blueprint had been rebuilt faster and stronger. The aliens thought humans were barely smarter than animals. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sir Soyoung said quietly, "The president is asking for updates. How much longer do we wait?" Minho looked back at the screen where Jiwoo was still trying to negotiate with creatures who saw humans as useful pets. Not much longer. They're making this choice easy for us. On the screen, High Counselor Velnith was speaking again. The human colonies will also provide workers for our mining operations. Young, healthy workers. We will choose which ones. Jiwoo stood up so fast his chair fell over. You're talking about slavery. We're talking about contribution. War Chief Grektho said, your species contributes very little to the galaxy. Time to change that. Minho turned off the screen. He had heard enough. Contact all division heads. Operation Thunder begins final. Preparations tomorrow. What should I tell the president? Tell him the aliens just wrote their own ending to this story. They've pushed too far for too long. Now they're going to learn what happens when humanity's patience runs out. In the cold meeting room, Jiwoo gathered his papers and walked toward the door. The aliens laughed behind him, making jokes about human pride and human stupidity. They had no idea that their laughter was about to stop forever. The baby species was about to grow up. 6 months passed like a bad dream. Every week brought new demands from the Confederation. More food, more workers, more everything. The aliens seemed to enjoy watching humans struggle to meet their impossible requests. Then came the message that changed everything. Foreign Minister Hai-jin Choi read the official document 3 times before she believed it. Her hands shook as she held the glowing tablet. The words were simple, but they meant death for millions of people. Immediate relocation of all human settlements in the Outer Rim required. 12 colonies will be evacuated within 30 days to create buffer zones against pirate activity. No exceptions. 15 million people lived in those 12 colonies. Farmers who had spent their whole lives growing food in alien soil. Miners who dug deep into strange rocks under foreign stars. Children who had never seen Earth but called these distant worlds home. Grandparents who wanted to die where they had lived. Hai-jin called President Dong-Gahan Park immediately. His face appeared on her screen, looking older than his 60 years. The stress of dealing with the aliens had turned his black hair gray. They can't be serious, he said after reading the document. The Confederation Council meets tomorrow. They expect our answer. Our answer is no. The next day, Hai-jin stood in the same cold conference room where Ji-woo had suffered through so many meetings, but this time felt different. The air seemed thicker, like before a storm. High Counselor Velneath floated in his chair, his glass body throwing colored light around the room. War Chief Grakdo stood like a statue made of scales and scars. The Zephyrian trademasters counted their money on glowing screens. The human response, Velneath asked without looking at her. The colonies are not empty land, Hai-jin said. Her voice stayed steady, even though her heart was beating fast. They are homes. We will not abandon our people. Grakdo's yellow eyes got narrow. You will not. We will not. High Counselor Velneath's body got brighter. When he spoke, his voice sounded like breaking glass. Then you will learn what happens when children say no to their parents. The attack came 3 days later. New Eden was a green world, where nothing should have been green. The first human settlers had spent 20 years changing the soil, bringing earth plants to grow under an alien sun. Apple trees grew next to purple flowers that had no earth names. Human children played in fields where both earth corn and alien grain grew side by side. Captain Taeho Lim was eating breakfast with his family when the sirens started. His daughter Minyoung dropped her spoon. Daddy, what's that sound? Just a drill, honey, he lied. But he knew it wasn't a drill. The colonial defense systems were screaming warnings about incoming ships. Big ships, military ships, that the Chronothi fleet dropped out of hyperspace like angry gods. 12 massive warships, their hulls black as space itself. They had names like Death's Hand and Blood Drinker, names meant to scare enemies. Admiral Korthzak commanded the fleet from his flagship. He was old even for a Chronothi, covered in more scars than scales. He had destroyed 17 worlds in his long career. New Eden would be number 18. Begin bombardment, he ordered. The first nuclear missiles hit the capital city of Haven. 200,000 people lived there, farmers selling their crops, shopkeepers opening their stores, children walking to school. The explosion turned the morning sky white, then black, then nothing. Tae-ho held his family tight as the ground shook. Minyoung was crying. His wife Sujin was trying to call her mother in the next town. The phone lines were dead. We have to get to the shelter, Tae-ho said. They ran outside. The sky was full of fire. Chronothi fighters screamed overhead, shooting anything that moved. Their neighbor's house was already burning. Old Mr. Park was lying in his garden, not moving. The underground shelter was packed with people, scared faces in the dark. Children crying for their parents. Parents crying for their children. Everyone knew they were going to die. The bombardment lasted 3 hours. When it stopped, New Eden was gone. The green fields were black glass. The cities were holes in the ground. The apple trees that had taken 20 years to grow were ash in the wind. 2 million people had lived on New Eden. That morning, by evening, they were all dead. On Earth, President Dong-Han Park got the casualty reports in his office in Seoul. He sat at his desk reading name after name after name. Whole families gone. Children who would never grow up. Old people who had died far from the Earth. They remembered that the Confederation's official response came an hour later. Not an apology, not even fake sadness. Just a simple message. Regrettable but necessary enforcement action. Future compliance will prevent such incidents. They called 2 million human deaths regrettable. That night, President Park appeared. On every screen in human space, he looked directly into the camera and spoke words that would change the galaxy forever. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies. Today, the Galactic Confederation murdered 2 million of our people. They call it enforcement. We call it what it is. Genocide. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder, diplomatic. Relations with the Galactic Confederation are terminated immediately. Humanity will defend itself by any means necessary. Across alien worlds, the news was met with laughter. The baby species was having a tantrum. What could primitive humans do against powers that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years? In his secret command center, Admiral Minho Kim watched the president's speech. Around him, officers prepared for orders they had hoped would never come. Sir, Captain So Young Lee asked quietly. Minho, looked at the star map showing human space. 12 colonies full of families. Earth itself with its billions of people, all of them depending on decisions made in this room. Send the message, he said. Operation Thunder is now active. The aliens were about to learn that humanity's patience had limits, and they had crossed them. Operation Thunder began at exactly 600 hours, Galactic Standard Time, across 17 different star systems. Human fleets appeared out of nowhere, like ghosts, becoming real. Admiral Minho Kim stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride, humanity's newest and most secret warship. Around him, officers worked at stations that looked nothing like the old, slow computers the aliens had given them. These were human-built, human-designed, and light years ahead of anything the Confederation had ever seen. All fleets report ready. Sir, Captain So-Young Lee said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were bright with something that might have been excitement or fear. Execute Thunder Protocol, Minho said. The first target was Atrium Prime, the Veltar military headquarters. It was supposed to be impossible to attack. The Veltar had built their defenses over 1,000 years, layer upon layer of shields and weapons and sensors. They bragged that no enemy had ever gotten close to their beautiful crystal cities. Captain Jin Woo Nam led 12 human fighters toward the planet. His ships were small and black, covered in metal that bent light around them like water. The Veltar sensors looked right through them and saw nothing. Remember, Jinwoo told his pilots, we hit military targets only. No civilian buildings, no homes, no schools. We're not them. The Veltar defense grid was a work of art. Hundreds of weapons platforms floating in space, all connected by streams of energy that looked like golden spider webs. Beautiful and deadly. The aliens who built it thought it was perfect. They were wrong. Jinwoo's fighters slipped through the gaps in the web like shadows, their weapons charged with a sound like thunder rolling across the sky. Then they fired. The Veltar weapons platforms exploded in flowers of light. One by one, the golden web broke apart. In 15 minutes, defenses that had protected Atrium Prime for centuries were floating scrap metal. Impossible, whispered General Velkoff from his command center on the planet's surface. Our scanners show nothing. How are they doing this? He would never get an answer. Jinwoo's fighters were already gone, moving to their next target, on the other side of the galaxy. The Chronothi stronghold of Warrior's Rest was under attack by weapons that didn't exist. Commander Yujin Ha sat in her ship's computer room, her fingers dancing over keyboards that glowed with soft blue light. Entering their network now, she said into her headset. The Chronothi were proud of their military computers. They called them iron mines and said they could never be broken by enemy tricks. Every Chronothi warrior learned to use them, but only the smartest understood how they really worked. Yujin understood them better than the aliens who built them. She had studied their code for years, finding every weakness, every backdoor, every stupid mistake. Now she was inside their system like a virus made of pure thought. What do you want me to do? Asked her second-in-command, Lieutenant J. Pak. Turn their own weapons against them, Yujin said. Let's see how the mighty warriors like being shot by their own guns. On Warrior's Rest, War Chief Draknor watched his defense screens with growing horror. The orbital weapons platforms were turning away from space and pointing down at the planet, at his own military bases. What's happening? He roared. The iron mines are not obeying. His technician replied, they're targeting our own positions. The first missile hit the main weapons factory. The second destroyed the military training center. The third took out the fleet repair yards. All fired by Chronothi weapons, guided by Chronothi computers, but controlled by human minds. Draknor had fought in 30 wars. He had never seen anything like this. The enemy was using his own strength against him, turning his weapons into tools of his own destruction. Shut down the entire network, he ordered. Sir, if we do that, we'll be completely defenseless. We're already defenseless. The Zephyrian trade hub at Golden Harbor fell without a single shot fired. Captain J. Minnow didn't need weapons to destroy the merchant princes. He had something much more powerful, information. Broadcasting now, said his communications officer. Every ship in the Golden Harbor system received the same message. Detailed records of illegal weapons sales. Lists of slave markets, evidence of price fixing and trade manipulation. All of it pulled from the Zephyrian's own secret files. Trademaster Velquinox watched his empire crumble in real time. His own security forces were abandoning their posts. His business partners were cutting off communications. His customers were demanding refunds for goods they now knew were stolen. How did they get our private files? He asked his assistant. I don't know, sir. Our security systems show no signs of break. Then how? The answer was simple. Humans had been watching and learning for 50 years. Every piece of alien technology shared with humanity had been studied, improved, and understood better than the aliens understood it themselves. The Zeph had given humans access to their trade networks. They thought they were being generous. They were actually handing over the keys to their own destruction. In 72 hours, the Galactic Confederation's military power across 3 sectors was broken. Weapons platforms drifted dark in space. Defense networks lay in ruins. Trade routes were chaos. The three species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found themselves helpless before the primitive humans they had treated like pets. High Counselor Valneath received the damage reports in his crystal palace. The numbers were impossible to believe. Hundreds of military installations destroyed. Thousands of weapons, platforms offline. Entire fleets crippled. How many human ships did we destroy? He asked. None, sir, none. Our forces never even saw them coming. On Seoul's Pride, Admiral Minho Kim read the final reports. Operation Thunder was complete. The Confederation's military might was broken, but not a single civilian had been harmed. Not one school or hospital or home had been touched. What now, sir? Captain Soyoung Lee asked. Minho looked at the star map. Red dots showed Confederation military bases, all dark now. Blue dots showed human colonies, safe under the protection of the fleets that had just proven they were the strongest force in the galaxy. Now, he said, we wait for them to call. The call came 6 hours later. The emergency meeting happened on Unity Prime, the Confederation's capital world. For the first time in 1,000 years, the three ruling species looked scared. High Counselor Valneath's crystal body was dim, like a light running out of power. War Chief Gracht, though, paced back and forth, his claws clicking on the metal floor. The Zephyrian trademasters huddled around their broken computers, trying to count losses they couldn't even understand. We must contact the humans immediately, Valneath said, his voice shook like wind through broken glass. Offer them whatever they want. We cannot show weakness. Gracht, though, growled, but his yellow eyes looked worried. The Chronothi do not surrender. The Chronothi also do not exist without their weapons, snapped Trademaster Velquinox. Do you know how much money we lost? How many trade routes are gone? The humans destroyed our entire economy in 3 days. The transmission to Earth took several tries. Human communication networks kept refusing their calls. When President Donghae Park finally appeared on their screens, he looked different, older, harder, like a man who had seen too much death. We are prepared to negotiate, Valneath began. No, President Park said simply. We offer humanity full membership in the Confederation. Equal status, fair representation in all decisions. No, we will provide immediate reparations for New Eden, full compensation for all losses. No, Gracht stepped forward, his scarred face twisted with anger. You cannot simply refuse all offers. There must be terms. President Park leaned forward. In his chair, when he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of 2 million dead. You had 50 years to offer us equality. You chose oppression. You had countless chances to show mercy. You chose murder. That time is over. The transmission ended. The Confederation leaders sat in silence, finally understanding that their victims had become their judges. 3 weeks later, Admiral Sujin Park stood in the courtroom on Earth. She was Jiwee's older sister, but where he had been a diplomat, she was a soldier. Her uniform was simple black with silver stars, but everyone in the room knew she commanded fleets that could break worlds. Bring in the first defendant, she ordered. War Chief Gracht entered in chains. The proud Chronothi warrior who had destroyed New Eden now looked small and old. His scales had lost their shine. His scars seemed faded. The trial was broadcast. Across the galaxy, humans and aliens watched together as evidence was presented. Videos of the attack on New Eden, communications between Confederation leaders, orders to kill civilians, all of it recorded in their own systems, preserved in their own words. We acted within Confederation law, Gracht said when asked to defend his actions. Judge Kung Soo-yoon looked up from his desk. He was a quiet man, who had once been a teacher on New Eden. His wife and 2 children had died in the bombardment. His voice was steady when he spoke. Confederation law permitted genocide. That law was wrong. This court recognizes a higher authority. What authority? Gracht demanded. Justice. The trials continued for months. Not just the military leaders who ordered attacks, but the officials who planned them, the politicians who approved them, the traitors who profited from human suffering. All of them faced courts where their victims could finally speak. High Counselor Valneath was found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to life in prison. War Chief Gracht received the same sentence. Trademaster Velquinox lost everything he owned and was banned from conducting business anywhere in human space. But the real change was happening across the galaxy. Humans were dismantling the Confederation's power structure piece by piece. Captain Minesio Kim led teams that shut down illegal weapons factories on 17 worlds. Major Hyen Wu Lee freed thousands of slaves from hidden markets in the outer systems. Commander Yoonji Park seized the bank accounts of corrupt officials and returned the money to the people they had robbed. The process was slow but thorough. Every Confederation military base was closed or put under human control. Every weapons platform was either destroyed or given to species that had been oppressed by the old system. The vast fleets that had enforced Confederation rule were broken up. their ships given to planets that needed protection from pirates and raiders. Some aliens fought back. A group of young Chronothi warriors tried to restart their military. They attacked a human supply convoy, expecting an easy victory against the weak species. Captain Duyun Park's patrol ship found their wreckage floating in space 3 hours later. The humans had weapons the Chronothi couldn't even see, shields that turned their missiles into harmless light, and computers that predicted their every move before they made it. "Should we help the survivors?" asked his second officer. "Of course," Duyun replied. "We're not animals." The Chronothi survivors were rescued, treated for their injuries, and put on trial. They expected torture or execution. Instead, they were sentenced to community service, helping rebuild the worlds their people had damaged. Some of them learned to see humans as something other than enemies. Others spent their whole lives hating but never fighting again. The galaxy was changing. Species that had been silent for centuries found their voices. Worlds that had been robbed finally got justice. People who had lived in fear could sleep safely. And in the center of it all, humanity stood guard. Not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as protectors making sure the strong could never again prey on the weak. The Confederation was dead. In its place grew something better. A galaxy where justice mattered more than power, where the weak were protected instead of exploited, where mercy was strength instead of weakness. The aliens had pushed too far. Now they were learning what happened when humanity's patience finally ran out. 1 year after Operation Thunder, the galaxy looked completely different. Fleet Admiral Minho Kim stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's new command center built in orbit around Earth. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going. Human vessels worked alongside alien crews, but now they worked as equals. The graduation ceremony was happening in the main hall below. The first class of the new Galactic Defense Academy was about to receive their ranks. For the first time in galactic history, humans and aliens had trained together from the very beginning. "Nervous?" asked Admiral Soyoung Lee, walking up beside him. She had been promoted after Operation Thunder, now commanding her own fleet. A little Minho admitted, "We're trying to build something that's never existed before. A galaxy where everyone gets treated fairly." Down in the ceremony hall, Cadet Jong-Soo Park shook hands with his Veltar classmate Crystalline Velmyra. A year ago, their species had been at war. Now they had studied together, trained together, even saved each other's lives during the final combat exercise. "I still do not understand human humor," Velmyra said, her crystal body flickering with what humans had learned meant confusion. "That's okay," Jong-Soo laughed. "I still don't understand how you can see in 17 different colors. Perhaps we can teach each other." Admiral Minho smiled watching them. The old Confederation had kept species separate, afraid that cooperation would threaten their control. The new Terran hegemony encouraged it. Different species had different strengths. Working together, they were stronger than any of them alone. The ceremony began with a moment of silence for New Eden. 2 million names appeared on the wall behind the stage. Glowing softly in the dim light, Jong-Soo found his uncle's name among them. Velmyra's tentacle touched his shoulder gently. "They will not be forgotten," she whispered. President Dong-Hyeon Park gave the graduation speech. He looked healthier than he had in years. The stress lines around his eyes had faded. Leading a galaxy was hard work, but it was easier when you were building instead of just surviving. "You are not just soldiers," he told the graduating cadets. "You are the guardians of a new idea. That strength should protect the weak, not prey on them. That different does not mean enemy. That justice is more important than power." The applause came from dozens of different species, each showing approval in their own way. Humans clapped, Veltar glowed brighter, Chronothi stomped their feet, Zephyrians rustled their tentacles, all of them celebrating together. In the back of the hall, former Warchief Draknor watched from his wheelchair. The old Chronothi warrior had lost his legs during his trial, not from punishment but from a heart attack brought on by shame. He was serving his sentence by teaching young Chronothi about the cost of war. "Do you hate them?" asked his student, a young Chronothi named Grakvel. "I tried to," Graknor said quietly, "but they saved my life after my heart stopped. They could have let me die. Instead, they put me back together and gave me a chance to do something useful with what was left of my life." The humans are strange. Yes, they are stronger than us, but they choose mercy. They could rule through fear like we did, but they choose justice instead. I spent my whole life thinking that made them weak. I was wrong. Across the galaxy, the changes were everywhere. The former Confederation worlds had a choice: earn membership in the Terran hegemony through demonstrated commitment to equality and justice, or remain independent but under human protection. Most chose to join. The benefits were too good to ignore. Free trade between all member worlds. Protection from pirates and raiders. Access to human technology and medical care. Most importantly, a voice in their own government that actually listened. Some species struggled with the changes. The Chronothi had spent thousands of years believing that might made right. Learning to solve problems with words instead of weapons was hard for them. The Veltar had trouble accepting that their crystal cities were no more beautiful than human farms or Zephyrian trade stations. Beauty was in the eye of the beholder, and all eyes were equal now. The Zephyrians found it hardest of all. Their entire culture was based on profit and trade advantage. The new system demanded fair prices and honest dealing. Many of them went bankrupt before they learned to succeed without cheating, but others thrived under the new system. Young aliens who had grown up under Confederation oppression found opportunities their parents never dreamed of. Scientists from different species worked together on projects that seemed like magic. Artists created new forms of beauty by mixing their different traditions. On the former world of New Eden, now called Memorial Colony, the first harvest was coming in. The new settlers had planted earthwheat next to Veltar crystal flowers and Chronothi stone fruit. The memorial garden in the center of town held the ashes of the 2 million dead, but around it grew new life. Colony Director Sung Minho walked through the fields every morning, checking on crops that represented hope itself. Children played between the rows, human and alien kids together, laughing in languages their parents had never heard mixed before. "Sir," his assistant called, running up with a communication tablet. "Message from Earth. They want to know about the memorial service next month." "Tell them we'll be ready," Sung Min said. "And tell them something else. Tell them New Eden lives again." Back on Harmony Station, Admiral Minho Kim watched the last of the graduation ceremony. The new officers were taking their oath, promising to protect all sentient life regardless of species, to serve justice over power, to remember that strength without wisdom was tyranny. "Think it will work?" So Young asked. Minho looked out at the stars, where human and alien ships patrolled together, where former enemies were becoming friends, where a galaxy was learning that different didn't mean dangerous. "The old Confederation lasted 1,000 years through fear," he said. "Let's see how long our system lasts through hope." In the distance, a ship bearing the flag of the Terran hegemony jumped to hyperspace, carrying supplies to a world that had once been an enemy and was now a friend. The galaxy was healing, one world at a time. Humanity's patience had run out, but their capacity for forgiveness seemed endless.